Good morning, all you sexy people out there. It is Monday, January 10th. Hope you had a phenomenal weekend. I am dead tired. I am sleepy deepy. I did not get any sleep last night. It's about 8 a.m. right now. Whether I get sleep or not is irrelevant. I got to take the little one to school. I got to make sure I come and do the podcast. So I'm here, man. I'm here. It's 8 a.m. I'm sleepy as hell, but I'm going to try to give you guys as much energy as I can. And it's hard not to. It's hard not to give you a bunch of energy because of what we had going on this weekend and what we have going on today and moving forward. It is Monday. I promised you guys MMA Mondays, and that's what we'll get into. UFC Fight Night. We're going to deep dive into that card, look at some fights, look at a bunch of fights, especially in the main card, dive into the main event of that card between Giga and Calvin Kattar. So we'll jump into all that good stuff. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the college football national championship that's going on tonight. Georgia, Alabama. It's a rematch of the SEC championship game. We saw Alabama manhandle and take it to Georgia. Georgia's number one defense was put to shame that day, but they bounced back. They bounced back big time. That defense looked like the number one defense against Michigan. Also against Michigan, Stetson Bennett, quarterback from Georgia, had a phenomenal game, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's what he's going to need. The problem is, I don't know if he's going to get that. The problem is, if Nick Saban figured you out, I don't know if you can make the adjustments to then switch it up on Saban. If Saban's got you, then Saban's got you. You know what I mean? It's going to be an interesting game for sure. But if I have to pick, I don't think either one of these teams are going to be able to just run the ball all over each other. They're going to have to rely on their quarterbacks to make some big throws. If I have to pick a quarterback, I'm going to pick Bryce Young over Stetson Bennett. It's what we saw the first time. It's what we saw just weeks ago. It's not like they played, 5 months ago, 3 months ago, where these are two completely different teams. They both played each other 2 games ago. And what we saw in that game was two defense that can hold it down, that can stop the run game. But what we saw was Bryce Young pick Georgia apart. We saw Bryce Young have the best game of his young career. And what we saw was Stetson Bennett really struggle against Alabama. So we'll see if Bennett can carry what he did to Michigan over to Alabama. Completely different team, completely different defense. You're not going to have those wide open throws that he had against Michigan. And we're going to see how it goes. And I told everybody, this college football playoff year was cute, but it was going to be Georgia and Bama. It was a no-brainer. Michigan isn't beating Georgia, and Cincinnati damn sure ain't beating Alabama. It's just the truth. The two best teams already played each other. We've already seen the national championship, and it was the SEC championship. But they get to do it again. Georgia has a chance to right its wrong. What a great story it'd be for Georgia to lose to Alabama and say, hey, cool, we're going to win the one that matters the most and beat you in the national championship. Tough task to ask for Kirby Smart and Georgia, trying to beat a Nick Saban-led team that already beat them once. Bill O'Brien did a phenomenal job making sure he got into a rhythm, got Bryce Young going, and picked them apart. Which also, Bill O'Brien now talks of Jacksonville Jaguars and talks of another head coaching job possibly for Bill O'Brien opening up. Alabama seems to be the coach's rehab. Bill O'Brien goes there. He makes Bryce Young on that offense look good, especially late here in the season. Might get him another head coaching job in the NFL because there are a shit ton of coaching jobs open. We saw firings happening like crazy this morning. I woke up, Matt Nagy, Vic Fangio, Brian Flores, Mike Zimmer, all gone, all fired, all those coaches out of here. And if you're the only one out of these that really surprised me was Brian Flores. Mike Zimmer, Vic Fangio, Matt Nagy, I get it. Matt Nagy's the only one where I'm like, hey, you gotta get him out. If you keep him, why? What? Huh? If you were to keep Matt Nagy, huh? It wouldn't make any sense. Now, when it comes to Vic Fangio, Mike Zimmer, those are two defensive guys, defensive-minded people. They were defensive coordinators turned head coaches, and their defenses has still been pretty decent. Mike Zimmer is trying to do a lot with a little on defense. He seemed to go the route of, hey, stack the offense. Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, stack the offense, and I'll make do with the veterans I have on defense. I'll make do with Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter, and I'll piece together a secondary. I'll piece together the rest of that defensive line. I'll piece it together, and I'll make it work. But I need to make sure we have an offense with the firepower that can help me out. I'll make the defense work. Let's make sure we have a high-powered offense as well. And maybe that's what got him in trouble. Maybe he should have been a defensive coach who loaded up on defense. But regardless, those guys are gone. Like I said, Brian Flores is the one that really surprised me. Even with Mike Zimmer, in my opinion, still being a really good defensive coordinator, still being a guy who I think can take that Dan Quinn route. Same thing goes for Vic Fangio. Two guys that can take that Dan Quinn route and get fired as a head coach, go on to be a defensive coordinator somewhere, improve that defense, and then get looked at again for another possible head coaching job in a year or two, the same way Dan Quinn is. Dan Quinn was requested to be interviewed by Jacksonville because of the job he was able to do this year in Dallas. I think Vic Fangio and Mike Zimmer can do the same thing, and Brian Flores included now. Brian Flores was the only one that really shocked me. I can't understand the Brian Flores. I really can't. I mean, yes, the team isn't great. Yes, they didn't make the playoffs. But he hasn't been there that long. Reports were that they were frustrated, the moves that they made and the lack of the draft picks panning out, how many first round draft picks they've had and how they haven't really panned out well. And I guess you're putting Tua's struggles on Flores. It's just one of those situations. Maybe you want to bring in an offensive guy to help Tua if Tua's the guy in the long run. But if this is a team that could have somehow, some way made it work, figured out a way to get Deshaun Watson, you telling me Brian Flores can't take the Dolphins to the playoffs with Deshaun Watson? That one surprised me. I don't think Brian Flores did anything worthy of getting fired, but it happens all the time. Ask Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell got fired by the Colts because he won 2 games with Curtis Painter because Peyton Manning broke his fucking neck. Jim Caldwell got fired by the Detroit Lions after going 9-7 with Detroit. 3 straight years of winning records, and he got fired because they didn't win a playoff game. So sometimes you're just not given. Meanwhile, guys like Jason Garrett spent a decade in Dallas. Meanwhile, guys like Matt Nagy get 2 years more than they should have. Meanwhile, guys like Adam Gase get fired by the Dolphins and then immediately go and destroy the Jets franchise. You can destroy 2 teams' franchise in 3 years, and that's okay. But if you have a winning season but don't make the playoffs, or if you have a winning season and lose in the first round of playoffs, that's cause for termination. Within your first 3 years of being in that team, in that organization. Anyway, Steelers, some way, somehow, them and the Raiders, some way, somehow make the playoffs. For a second, I was nervous for the Steelers. For a second, I thought maybe this is going to end in a tie. Maybe they're going to go ahead and let this game end in a tie so both the Raiders and Chargers can make the playoffs, which means the Steelers would be out. Good for Big Ben. Good for Mike Tomlin. That wasn't the case. 2 teams, obviously, besides the Dallas Cowboys, 2 teams that I was really rooting for to make the playoffs were the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders. I love a good story. I want to see Big Ben's last ride, his last dance be in the playoffs. I didn't want it to be in the regular season. He gets to go to the playoffs, finish off his career with some really, really meaningful games. I don't think they've beaten the Chiefs, but at least he gets to go and play his last game in the playoffs. Hopefully the Chiefs give him a good ovation after they beat him, which they probably will. Give him a good ovation, man. Let him go out on top in the playoffs. That's what Big Ben deserves throughout his career. And for Derek Carr, Rich Bisaccia, and the Raiders, I couldn't have scripted something better for them. The firing of John Gruden, everything they've been through, to see them in the playoffs, and especially Derek Carr, who it seems like I'm the only person. Every week I'm the only person like Derek Carr. But Derek Carr. The Raiders, guys, but Derek Carr. It's like, Derek Carr, he's playing great. He's a top 10 quarterback. You have to think about it. He's definitely top 15, but he's probably top 10. If I go through the list, I don't know if I could find 10 guys better than him. For sure, find 5 guys better than him. Probably find 8 guys better than him. He's probably around 9 or 10. And that's good enough. That's good enough to build off of. That's good enough to get a legit team off of. And they don't have a legit team. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, cool. He's making the most of them. Josh Jacobs, cool. But their first round rookie or their first round draft pick in Henry Ruggs is gone. Their first round draft pick at corner is gone. That defense is it's nothing to really brag about. Max Crosby, he can get to the quarterback, okay. But they somehow, some way, find a way to make the playoffs. Congrats to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Congrats to the Las Vegas Raiders. This is what I really wanted. We get to see them both in the playoffs. The Raiders have a real shot to beat Cincinnati. I promised UFC. Let's jump over to it. UFC Fight Night Kattar, Chikadze. This is going to be a banger, but we'll start from the bottom. We'll work our way up. I do want to mention the Charles Oliveira, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaithje conundrum. There's no way. And I say that because as I'm saying it, I have to tell myself, right? There's no way. That's basically how I'm saying it. There's no way that Conor McGregor gets a title shot against Charles Oliveira instead of Justin Gaithje. There's no way that happens, right, Dana? Right, UFC? But if the UFC wants to make the most money, if Charles Oliveira wants to make the most money, remember, as champion, you get pay-per-view points. Charles Oliveira can make more money than Dustin Poirier. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. Charles Oliveira will make more money than Dustin Poirier made against Conor if he fights Conor, because he will get a larger pay-per-view percentage. He will make a lot, and Charles knows it, and because Charles knows it, he comes out and says, I'll wait for Conor. Hey, Justin, we'll figure it out later, but I'll wait for Conor. Dana White, UFC, hey, give me Conor. I'll wait for him. I'm chilling. How much time does he need? Middle of the year? No problem. I'll wait. And meanwhile, Conor McGregor is sitting there going, well, shit, all right, let's get it going. Conor's always going to throw his name in there. He's always going to throw his name in there. Why not? You know that your name is going to bring dollar signs, and dollar signs is enough. Dollar amount is always enough of a reason to do something. What doesn't make any sense? It doesn't make sense why Conor would get a title shot over Justin Gaethje. Well, if it doesn't make dollars, it don't make sense. And if it makes a shit ton of dollars, then it makes sense. And in Conor McGregor's case, that's all that matters. How much revenue do we get from Conor McGregor compared to Justin Gaethje? Then it makes sense. I don't think Dana White and the UFC would allow that to happen. I think they'll do right by Gaethje. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Charles Oliveira or whether it's Justin Gaethje, Conor can always jump in for a title fight. If you really want to squeeze another title fight out of Conor McGregor, if you really want to squeeze another title fight because you feel a title fight would garnish more revenue for Conor McGregor or from Conor McGregor than a non-title fight, you can always make that happen. Whether it's Charles, whether it's Gaethje, you don't need it to be Charles Oliveira. Oliveira might not even sell as well as Gaethje. If Gaethje beat Oliveira, there's a legit reason to think that Gaethje and Conor would garnish more pay-per-view buys than Oliveira and Conor. But we'll see. Gaethje threatens to burn it down. He said, if this happens, I'm burning this shit down. I don't think it'll happen, Gaethje. I don't think it'll happen. I think Justin Gaethje is going to get the shot. It's his. Conor's still rehabbing. You see Conor being thick as all hell. He's not ready to fight anytime soon. He's probably about 6 months away. from being able to return to the octagon. Everyone's talking about, oh, he's so thick, he's so thick. Yeah, it's what happens when you can't do cardio. It's what happens when you can't go run. It's what happens when you're just sitting there lifting weights nonstop, retaining all that water and just lifting. Yeah, you're gonna get thick. Looks good though. Looks good though. Has people talking about maybe it's steroids. Hey, anytime somebody accuses you of steroids, you're doing something right. Even if that something is steroids, you're doing something right if somebody's accusing you of taking steroids. Like, cool. But switching from that UFC Fight Night Kattar, Giga, I want to start off the card looking at it. Brian Kelleher against Kakramonov. Bear with me on some of these names, guys. Kakramonov, Brian Kelleher. Kelleher up and down lately, 2-2 in his last 4 fights. His losses to Ricky Simon and Cody Stamann, so it's a tough ride for Brian Kelleher. He's older, well in his 30s. He's been around the block. Like I said, losses to Ricky Simon and Cody Stamann, not easy opponents by any means. We've seen Ricky Simon since go on a little bit of a tear. So we'll see with Brian Kelleher. He beat Domingo Pilardi in August. Kakramonov, a guy who won his UFC debut against Trevin Jones by way of guillotine, started 5-0 as a pro. He has a loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, and he has also won 3 in a row. So this is going to be an interesting situation. We have a guy who's been around the block, Kakramonov. He's fought in PFL before. He has 3 wins in a row, but not against notable names, against another guy who is his experience, right? And Brian Kelleher, his losses are 2 notable names. His losses are 2 guys who have made an impact in the UFC, a guy in Ricky Simon who is in the top 15. So he's had some losses to really good guys, and he has that experience in the UFC. Kakramonov, only 1 fight so far in the UFC, won his debut, and here we go. Now you get Brian Kelleher. What can you do? And the UFC does this all the time. You're going to see it on every single card. Veteran, he's kind of always around the top 15, but never quite in it. And here comes the guy who won his debut. We feel good about him. He won his debut. Boom, let's put him together. This is what I'm talking about in things that they don't happen in boxing. This is the difference between UFC and boxing. This doesn't happen. He makes his UFC debut. He's won 3 in a row, and here's Brian Kelleher. Oh, Brian Kelleher, a veteran who's been here and done all this, and here's this young up-and-coming stud who's not established yet. That doesn't happen in boxing. In boxing, Kelleher would fight other guys kind of up there around that area with him. Fight guys who are always kind of teetering, who have a lot of fights, have a lot of experience. Kakramonov would not be fighting anybody of that nature. Kakramonov would be still on the undercard. I mean, he's on the undercard. He's on the prelims. But he would stay on the prelims fighting other guys that the UFC is just kind of bringing in. Oh, we feel good about him? Let's bring in these randoms. Let's have him fight everybody's debut. We'll give him every single person he fights for the next 3-4 fights will be their UFC debut. And hopefully he beats all of them and we can build a name here. That's boxing, not the UFC. Oh, cool, you won your UFC debut? Sweet, you're really good? You've won 3 in a row? Cool. Here's Brian Kelleher. Deal with that. Not to say this should be a complete domination by Kelleher. Not to say Kelleher should win this fight. Kakramonov is more than capable of winning. But it just goes to show you the UFC is trying to put on great fights. They're not always trying to build names. That's why a guy like Sean O'Malley gets a lot of hate and a lot of jealousy, a lot of envy, because they go, well, why is this guy getting that treatment? Why is he getting brought up slow? I'd like to be brought up that way. I would love to have a bunch of opportunities for viral finishes. Which they see the money in Sean O'Malley. That's why they're doing it. Next fight I want to look at, Court McGee, Ramiz Brahimaj. McGee, 37 years old. Guy who's been around for a long... I mean, Court McGee was fighting back when... I remember Court McGee... I was probably 12, 13 years old the first time I've ever seen Court McGee fight. Maybe not that young. Maybe I was like 16. But still, it's been a long time coming for Court McGee, another guy, veteran. Listen to Court McGee's first couple fights in the UFC. Sean Brady, Diego Lima, Carlos Condit, those are his losses. Tough fights, man. He won his last fight against Claudio Silva, though. Brahimaj 1-1 in the UFC. Got knocked out to Max Griffin. Beat Sasha Paliknikov with a rear naked choke. So again, two guys kind of in the same boat. Court McGee, you're 37. You've been on a losing streak. But again, Sean Brady, Diego Lima, Carlos Condit, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Those are three legit guys that he's lost to. But he lost 3 in a row. Then he beats Claudio Silva. Okay, here we go. So where do we have Court McGee? He hasn't looked great. He won that fight and he looked good. There you go. But he was coming off of 3 in a row. He was at the spot where if you lose this fight, you're probably gone. He was at that. This is a who's going to be gone fight. Who are we cutting? Who are we getting rid of? This is what this fight is. If Court McGee's good enough to beat this guy, then he'll stick around. If he loses, then that's 4 out of your last 5, and you're probably going to be gone, and you're 37 years old. We're just kind of waiting to see if there's a resurgence, but we're probably heading towards Court McGee not being in the UFC anymore. That's what I get from this fight. And for Brahimaj, same thing. You're 1-1 in the UFC. You got knocked out in your first fight. You won your next fight in the first round. Cool. What do we have with you? We don't know. So we're going to give you a 37-year-old vet, a guy who's lost 3 out of his last 4. And let's see. Let's see if there's something. How much improvements have you made? How good are you? Do we have something with you? Because if you lose this fight, then that means you're 1-2 in your 3 fights in the UFC. And you're probably 1 more loss away from being cut. If you win this fight, then you're 2-1. And now we may have something with you. This is a what the fuck do we have with these guys fight. Another fight teetering, same thing. Great matchup. Brandon Royval, Rogerio Bontorin. Bontorin, Contender Series winner. He's won 4 straight in the UFC, including a win against Howlin' Paiva, who just lost to Sean O'Malley, a guy who had just cracked the top 15. He cracked the top 15, then was immediately removed from the top 15 without losing to anybody. He cracked it and then was removed just cause. But then he fought Sean O'Malley. It was Sean O'Malley's biggest test since Chito Vera, and he got knocked out. Bontorin had a win against Howlin' Paiva. He had lost 2 straight after that to Ray Borg and Kai Kara France. No slouches at all, Ray Borg and Kai Kara France. We saw Kai Kara France recently just knock out Cody Garbrandt, so definitely no shame in losing to guys like Ray Borg, who's a veteran who's been doing this, and of course a up-and-coming guy in Kai Kara France. He just got a win against Matt Schnell. That was in the Charles Oliviera, Michael Chandler card. He beat Matt Schnell there. And for Brandon Royval, 4-fight win streak, including a win over Kai Kara France. He lost 2 after that to Brandon Moreno and Alexander Pantoja, who again, nothing. You're talking about losing to the champion and Pantoja, both beasts, both studs. These 2 guys are legit. They're beasts. This is a huge fight. I think this is a fight where one of these guys can catapult into contender-ish status. Whoever wins this fight, cool, let's go. You have Askarov, you have Kai Kara France. Obviously, Moreno and Figgy are going to be fighting, so you need another guy to throw in there. Whoever wins this fight, they're going to take that next step, whether it's Bontorin or Brandon Royval. Both these guys are really good. In this division, everybody's so fast. Everybody's so similar. No one really has that big. That's why Figgy was so intriguing, because he had that one-hit power where you're like, holy shit, he's knocking dudes out at this weight class. He's sitting dudes down with one shot at this weight class. That's why Figgy was so intriguing. That's why he just mauled through everybody until he met his match with Brandon Moreno. But this is a legit contender. This is going to catapult somebody into that contendership status, whether it's Bontorin or Royval. I don't know which ways it's going to go. If I had to pick someone, I'd probably say Brandon Royval. But it's a tough fight, and this is one of them. I don't know. I haven't seen Dana White's. Now you know. Well, it hasn't come out yet. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be, if you don't know now, you know. This is going to be on Dana White stuff right here. Next fight I want to look at, Katlyn Chookagian, Jennifer Maia. Chookagian's been around the block, man. Chookagian's been doing this for such a long time. She has been a top five female at 125 for the longest time. She's never going to fall out. She's also never going to be champion. It's a tough... I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again. How long are you cool with going along for the ride? Now, in Katlyn Chookagian's mind, she's probably at the point where she feels like she can get herself to another title shot. She's probably at the point right now where she feels like, I just want another title shot. I just want to give it a go one more time. I had it, I got destroyed by Shevchenko, but I just want another chance because I feel like I could do better. I feel like that wasn't the best I could do and I want to do better. That's probably where she's at. But how long can someone be okay with being the third best? How long can someone be okay with being in the top five? Very similar to Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis has had 2 opportunities to win a championship. Lost both. The last one would have been an interim championship, an interim title, but he had a chance to be a champion. He lost that one, and it was probably his worst performance. The one against Daniel Cormier wasn't much better. How long? You see him now, and it's, I don't want to do 5 rounds. Let me get some cool matchups. He's matched up now with Tai Tuivasa. Those fun matchups. I talked about it last time. Give Daniel Cormier some fun matchups. He's not... I know he called out Stipe. He said he owed it to people after his performance against Gane. He came out and said that if the fight would have been anywhere but Houston, he would have done better, that he just let the pressure get to him. All that stuff. Yeah, cool. How long can you go in your career knowing I won't be the champion? I've had my opportunities. It didn't happen. Maybe I can get there again. But if I get there again, what's going to change? How long can you go in your career that way? Dustin Poirier, another great example. I have massive wins. Massive wins. I was an interim champion. I beat Max Holloway. I beat Conor McGregor twice. Even if you disagree and you say a leg break isn't a win, I've beaten Conor McGregor recently. I've beaten guys like Dan Hooker in a grueling fight. I've beaten some of the best guys in the world. But he had an opportunity against Khabib, lost. He had an opportunity against Charles Oliveira, who it just seemed like in his mind and everybody's mind, this was a no-brainer. This was what's supposed to happen. Dustin Poirier is supposed to be the champion. Couldn't get it done. You saw the heartbreak afterwards. You saw him sitting there going, I don't know. I could do it. I could claw my way back. I can win 3 more fights and claw my way back to a title, but do I want to? Or do I just want to go for some fun, big payday fights? Would I rather do that to end my career? Those are legit questions and concerns for Katlyn Chookagian. How long is it going to be okay for her to be third best in the division? She's never going to be outside of top. I'm never going to be able to find 5 girls. I mean, obviously, with age and as she gets older, yeah. But it's going to be hard to find 5 females all the time that are better than Katlyn Chookagian at that division. It's going to be hard. And for Jennifer Maia, same thing. Both girls who were clearly... I mean, Jennifer Maia had a much better performance against Shevchenko. But it's a situation where, like, as long as you're not getting destroyed, we're excited, we're pleased, we're, oh my god, this is a really good fight. Neither one of those girls are beating Shevchenko. It ain't happening. Valentina is the most well-rounded female fighter in the world. Neither one of them are beating Shevchenko. So, here you go. Big fight between 2 of them. Whoever wins is probably going to have one more fight. One more fight against someone in that area to try to be in the top. You know, who knows? Who freaking knows? But one of them is going to move up. One of them is going to be one fight away from another championship fight. Neither one of them could beat the current champion. And that's where it goes for that 125 division. As long as Shevchenko is there, you know, all right, how many times is she going to have to beat the same girls? She's starting to get different matchups now, and they're just kind of bringing up people and bringing them along. But at some point, she's just going to start overlapping. She's just going to start Chikadze 2, Jennifer Maia 2, all these girls 2, and just beating all of them. Last fight before we jump into the main event, Muslim Salikov versus Michel Pereira. Very interesting matchup. Muslim's 5'9", Michel is 6'1". Notable height and reach advantage for Michel Pereira. Pereira, if you don't know him, if you've never seen him, the dude is entertaining as all hell. The dude is entertaining as shit, man. The stuff he does, open palm strikes, backflips on the mat. The thing with him, though, is he does get hit, and he does burn a lot of energy. He wastes a lot of stamina on just the really high energy, high level fighting. Well, more high energy than high level. It is high level, don't get me wrong. That's not the word I was trying to use. Very, very high energy. A lot of stamina draining in the stuff that he does in his strikes. But he does get hit as well. And for Muslim, his nickname is the King of Kung Fu. You don't think he's going to hit you? He's on a 5-fight win streak. Both these guys are moving up. This is a banger. Pereira's last loss, his only loss recently was to Diego Sanchez by disqualification. He's beating the shit out of Diego. He lost by DQ. Diego gave a little Aljamain Sterling act, and he won by disqualification. But Pereira didn't really lose that fight. He hasn't lost. Pereira hasn't lost to anybody. He's had a couple decision wins. Tough fight. His last fight was kind of tough, but he came out on top. Now he fights Muslim. 5-fight win streak. Here we go, man. Here we go. It's a big matchup. This is going to do big things in that division. It's going to shake and move some people around. If you haven't seen Michel Pereira fight, please do. Now, I know for all the big-time MMA heads out here, you'll be like, dude, who hasn't seen Michel Pereira fight? I'm talking to the casuals. I'm talking to the people that don't watch a whole bunch of the UFC. You really only watch those main cards. You'll watch everything Conor. You'll watch everything Dustin. You'll watch championships. You like Usman and you like Adesanya. Trust me, don't miss Michel Pereira. Don't miss it. It's free. This is a free fight night, guys, on ESPN+. When I say free, not pay-per-view. Also, Dana White moving pay-per-view, the UFC moving the pay-per-view price up. All right. I'm never one to just completely come out here and just go crazy about fighter pay. That's kind of clickbaity to me. It's like, okay, anybody can just be like, oh, fighter pay this and this and this. Anybody can say that. But in this situation, yeah, if you're increasing pay-per-view by, $10 each? It's a lot of fucking money, man. That doesn't seem like a lot, but you talk about however many, let's think about a Conor fight. 1.4, 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. You're increasing that by $10. Now do 10 times 1.5 million. It's a lot of fucking money. So if you're going to increase that, yeah, dude. Yeah, we should see fighter pay increase as well. Yeah. And I'm not one to go crazy on fighter pay and talk about how unfair and compare UFC fighters to slaves. Like, I'm not one to do that. But in this scenario, if you're increasing your pay-per-view, it's typically should be because you're also increasing fighter pay. If not, what are we doing? You better have some grandiose scheme on how you're going to create and build something that's going to benefit the fighter so much that in the long run, they'll make even more money than even if you just increase the fighter pay with the extended or with the added $10 to the pay-per-views. You better have something in your back pocket. Jesus Christ, my nose is itchy. And last but not least, Calvin Kattar, Giga Chikadze. For Calvin Kattar, God, man, you can't catch a break. This is a thing I hate about the UFC, more so than fighter pay. This is the one thing I absolutely hate about the UFC, where one guy gets blasted. I mean, fucked up. And immediately after, it's someone that can fuck them up just as bad. Where it's like, whoa, can we give them something else? Can we find them a get-right fight? And if they can't win that one, then obviously we know the trajectory of where they're going. But giving Tony Ferguson Charles Oliveira after what Justin Gaethje did to him, it's criminal. Justin Gaethje took years off of Tony Ferguson's life. I mean, beat the shit out of him. That fight should not have been called by Herb Dean. That fight should have been stopped by the corner. A round before Herb Dean stopped it. Tony Ferguson got the shit kicked out of him. And immediately after he fights, the current champion of the fucking division. Luckily, Charles decided to take it to the ground. Luckily, Charles decided to just dominate wrestling, dominate jiu-jitsu positions, threaten with submissions, stay on top, be heavy, and ground him and just grind him out that way, luckily. Almost broke his fucking arm, but luckily it wasn't a severe concussion, CTE, just slobber knocker of a fight for Tony Ferguson. Then after that, here's Beneil Dariush. Here you go, get your fucking ankle snapped. Cool. Why could we not have given him somebody else? If you want to give him Charles after Justin, okay, I guess. But after that, can we give him a Cerrone? Can we give him somebody who is still interesting, but we don't feel is going to beat the piss out of him? Someone that we don't feel is surging and should probably be a champion, or at least be in a championship fight. Can we give him something else? Give him someone around the 10 to 15 spot? Give him an unranked fighter. I don't give a fuck. If he loses to that person, then clearly we know where Tony Ferguson is at. And if he wins, then okay, then you fight another guy in the top 10. If you win that, then we're back in business, baby. Then we fight a Beneil Dariush. But to go back to back to back like that, holy shit. Same thing happened for Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley was a champion afterwards. It's just like, he's fighting all the... What's the difference between Tyron Woodley on who he would have fought, whether he was champion or non-champion? What's the difference? If anything, you can make the case that Tyron Woodley would have had easier matchups as a champion. Because while Kamaru Usman faced Jorge Masvidal, Tyron Woodley was fucking fighting Colby Covington and Vicente Luque. So you can make the case that, like, there's no fucking difference between whether I'm champion or not champion. I'm going to fight the same fucking guys. I'm just going to fight them sooner than the champion's going to fight them. But if I lose a championship, why not give me somebody at fucking 10 to 15? Let me win a fight, build back up. You lose a championship or you lose a title contender, the number one contender fight, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Okay, you drop down, and then you build back up. Win 2 more fights, right? Drop down to someone around the... Again, if you give him someone that's unranked, fine. That's... Who cares? Win that fight, move up, fight somebody in the top 10, win that, move up, fight somebody in the top 5, and then we're back in business. But it's like, okay, you lost the championship. Now you're going to fight whoever the number 1 current ranked guy is. And if you lose that, you're going to fight whoever number 2 is. If you lose that, you're going to fight whoever number 5 is, and then you're out of here. It's like, what the fuck? And that's what's happening right now when you look at Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar got the shit kicked out of him to Max. Max beat the piss out of Calvin Kattar. The piss out of him. And you can make the argument for Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega got the piss kicked out of him. Yeah, you gave him the challenge. You gave him the Korean Zombie. He wins. He goes on. He fights for the belt. But think about how much more beneficial it would have been to Ortega if he didn't do that. Because again, we saw Brian Ortega get the piss kicked out of him. Years taken off of his life against Alexander Volkanovski. Think how beneficial it would have been to Ortega if after the Max fight, he fought someone around 15, whatever, and he was able to string together 2 or 3 wins against guys that he could beat. And he still gives you those matchups of these young guys who are coming up. And hey, even if you lose, you still have a long career ahead of you, and there's no shame in losing to Brian Ortega. There's no shame in losing to Tyron Woodley. There's no shame in losing to Tony Ferguson. And if you beat them, cool, then we fucking catapult you. Then you're good, you're ready to go. If you beat them, then hey, boom, now you're in the top 15. Or if you're in the top 15, now you're definitely in the top 10. And you're ready to take on bigger fights. You've proven it. If not, then we know that you still have some ways to go, and we'll give you some fair matchups. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be right now. It doesn't have to be always, are you good enough to be a champion or not? If not, get the fuck out. It doesn't have to always be like that. I mean, look at Nate and Dustin's career, I mean, Nate probably more so. Look at Nate and Jorge and some of these journeymen. Those are fucking great fights. They sell the best. You're telling me you still wouldn't want to see Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz? No one gives a shit that neither one of them are going to come close to ever sniffing a championship. Nate Diaz will never fight for a 170-pound championship. Tony Ferguson will never again fight for the 155-pound title. These things will never happen. Who cares? We're still watching Ferguson and Nate Diaz. Dustin Poirier has had 2 title fights, lost both. Who gives a shit? We're still watching him and Conor. We're still watching him and Nate. We're still going to watch. You don't have to give these guys the worst possible matchups. And I feel like that's what they're doing to Calvin Kattar, giving him Giga, who's a fucking monster. A monster. I mean, listen to Kattar's starting of Calvin Kattar's career. His first fight in the UFC, his UFC debut was against Andre Touchy Philly. That ain't no fucking pushover fight. Andre Philly's a legit fighter. That was his debut. His second fight in the UFC, Shane Burgos. Like, can we give Kattar something easier? And guess what? He beat both. He beat Andre Philly, he beat Shane Burgos, and he went on, won a few, lost one, won a few more, gets to fight Max Holloway, and gets absolutely destroyed. He lost to Zabit. He beat Jeremy Stevens, Dan Ige, obviously, before he fought Max, and then we know what Max did to him. And then for Giga, undefeated in the UFC, hasn't lost a fight in the UFC. Last 3 fights were by TKO. That fucking kick that he had, it was disgusting. Absolute disgusting. The way he out kickboxed Edson Barbosa, disgusting. It was against Cub Swanson, by the way. That body kick, that Giga kick. But this guy's a fucking monster, man. Is it fair to say that Giga's the best striker in that division? Probably. When you just watch him, no disrespect to Max, no disrespect to Yair. Those 2 motherfuckers are crazy. When you watch Giga and you watch him against Club Swanson, you watch him against Edson Barbosa, by the way, who a lot of people would assume is the best striker, one of the best strikers in that division. Picked him apart, destroyed him. Faster, more powerful, everything. That's who you give Calvin Kattar next. That's who we're going to set Calvin Kattar up with. Giga, a guy who so many people think will be the next champion. The guy who so many people think would beat Max Holloway. I see it. I see it on my timeline. So many people say Giga would beat Max. Giga's the one. And Calvin Kattar's got to fucking fight the guy. What's Calvin Kattar's fight going to be after he loses to Giga? Fucking Yair? He's going to go Max, Giga, Yair, Rodriguez, and then lose 3 and be like, oh, yeah, he's not good. We should probably look to cut him soon. Come on, man. Give him a fucking break. Give these guys a fucking break. You're killing them. You're killing me. I don't want to see these guys out of the UFC. I don't want to see them out of the UFC. I don't want to see Tony Ferguson being 1 fight away from being gone. I don't want to see Tony Ferguson being called washed up now. Washed up? Or maybe not top 5. There's a big difference between being washed and being not top 5. Lost a step? Sure. Not what he once was? Sure. But washed up? Washed up to me is apologies. Washed up to me is Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez is washed up. Diego Sanchez is just his body, his stamina, his just overall physical shape, his mental shape. It's just not the same. His fighting style, everything's different about Diego than when he was in his prime. Everything's different. And Diego's not good enough to beat anybody in the top 10. He might not be good enough to beat anybody in the top 15 in the UFC in that division currently. That's washed up. That's washed up. Tony Ferguson's not that. Tony Ferguson could beat guys in the top 15. For sure. Tony Ferguson, when you look at him, he doesn't look like this broken dude. This dude who just, it looks terrible and there's no way. He might not be a top 5 guy. Sure. That's fine. Why does that have to mean he's washed up? Why does that have to mean that he should no longer be in the UFC? That should be his decision. If you drop him down and you give him somebody outside of the top 15 or somebody right around that area, 10 to 15 rank, and he wins, and then he fights another person around the 10 rank and he wins, and then he fights somebody around 5 or so and he loses, you leave the decision with him. He would have to ask himself the question I keep asking, which is, how long am I okay with being not the best? How long am I okay with knowing that I'm not the best guy? How long am I okay with knowing that I will never be the champion? How long am I okay with that? But you let him decide that. You don't decide that for him. Calvin Kattar's going to be the same situation, man. I'm telling you, if he loses to Giga, they're going to give him some fucking monster anyway. They're not going to have him lose to Giga and then say, hey, you know what? You've lost 2 in a row. Let's give you something winnable. Or at least somebody who's not a monster who we don't know of. Now, if somebody surprises you, they end up being a monster, hey, there's nothing we can do about that. But we're not going to throw you to Yair. We're not going to use you as a stepping stone. He's a stepping stone right now. Sure, the UFC doesn't want him to lose, and there's nobody's fucking cheering against him. They're not rooting for him to lose. But you don't think in the back of the UFC's mind they're going, okay, we give him Giga, Giga destroys Keator, and now we got a fucking real championship contender here. Now Giga and Max, probably, especially since Max is out. Other news, Max Holloway out of the fight with Alexander Volkanovski. There's a lot of talks. A lot of talks about who Volk's going to fight next. We saw from Ariel Helwani. Shout out Ariel Helwani. Ariel Helwani's a funny character to me. He goes on these rants, and he's super team Jake Paul and the Paul brothers now. He has them on constantly, and he's always hyping them up. And that's cool. That's fine. I don't hate the Paul brothers at all. I think they're good for combat sports in general. The more eyeballs, the better. But he's definitely Team Jake. He's throwing shade at Dana White. He's throwing shade at the UFC. He's constantly talking about fighter pay and all the unfairness, and that's fine too. And then he talks about how the UFC, how unprofessional it is to announce fights where the guys haven't signed yet, to announce fights before paperwork gets done, how unprofessional it is. But yet, Ariel Helwani immediately comes out and says, oh, it's going to be Volkanovski and the Korean Zombie. They both said yes, and that's going to be we're just waiting on the UFC. Didn't you just say that you hate when the UFC does that? You can't say you hate when the UFC does it and then you go and do it. You heard from the Korean Zombie's manager that they wanted to fight, and you heard that Volkanovski pretty much verbally accepted, said, yeah, I would like to fight the Korean Zombie too. Okay, it's not done. And if anything, you might be fucking them over, because Dana White is a petty man. I love Dana. He's done a lot of great things. Anyone who says that Dana isn't this or isn't that, at the end of the day, man, he has catapulted the UFC to what it is today. And a lot of it would not have been done, especially at this rate that it got done without Dana White. Who knows if UFC ever kicks off the way it does without Dana White. So he deserves his credit in all of this. But he's a petty man. And who's to say that he gets so pissed off that Ariel's out here trying to break things that he's like, nah, fuck it. Let's give it to somebody else. Just to piss Ariel off, just to make Ariel look like he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, because Dana White loves it. Dana White absolutely loves telling people how Ariel doesn't know shit. You can find a million sound bites with Dana White saying Ariel Helwani doesn't know shit. Ariel Helwani has no inside information. He doesn't talk to anybody who makes any type of matches or rules or changes. He doesn't talk to anybody. Nobody from here talks to him. Everything he says is speculation. I think Dana would be like, yeah, I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. Fuck it. Because we haven't made our decision yet. So we'll, just to piss you off, just to make you look like an idiot, we're not going to put him against TKZ. And it'd be a weird fight for me. Korean Zombie lost to Brian Ortega. You know, I see people saying that they can't give Yair a shot because he lost to Max. But how come the eye test doesn't matter? We're only going off of wins and losses. We're not going off of performances. This is his first fight back. It was Yair's first fight back in years. He looked amazing. I mean, holy shit. He looked fast, solid, had a chin on him. Max hit him with some shots. He hit Max with some shots. Those shots can drop anywhere. Those shots can drop Volk. Those shots can drop Volk. So who's to say this Korean Zombie's just this easy no-brainer over someone like Yair. Now, the no-brainer to me would be Henry Cejudo. Now, the issue is Henry Cejudo's not in USADA testing. He would have to get back into the USADA testing pool. He would have to get tested. He would have to do all that. So it would take a lot longer. It'll take longer to set up a fight with Henry Cejudo than it would with the Korean Zombie or Yair Rodriguez. But in my opinion, that's a no-brainer. If if Henry Cejudo was serious, legit, and that's the thing with Cejudo, king of cringe, all that, we never know if he's serious or not. We never know if he was honestly offered a really good price. If Dana White and the UFC called him and said, hey, we're going to fucking give you whatever you want. Are you fucking serious? We don't know if he is or not. He might be like, no, I was just bullshitting. He's a troll. He trolls all the time. He's always saying he wanted to fight Max. He wanted to fight this guy. He wants to fight that guy. He wants to, let me move up here. I'd beat Brandon Moreno. I could beat Pereira. I'll beat Volkanovski. He'll beat everybody. He throws his name out all the time. Pereira Yan. Ever since Pereira Yan beat Jose Aldo, he's every single time Yan fights Henry Cejudo, I'd beat this guy. Dana, let me get him. But then nothing happens. Henry Cejudo would be the no-brainer fight here. But I don't think he's serious. Especially just having a baby. I think they just had a baby. I know his girlfriend was pregnant. I don't know if she's still pregnant or had a baby. Either way, it's tough to imagine that he'd want to enter a training camp now with a baby on the way or a newborn baby born. It's hard to imagine if that's what Henry Cejudo would want to do. I think it's all cap. I think it's complete horseshit. I don't think Cejudo has any plans to legitimately try to fight Volkanovski right now. The fact that he keeps his name in the mix, it leaves you to believe that he will fight at some point. But I don't think now. I don't think on short notice, when he's not even in the USADA testing pool. I just don't see that happening. So it might be the Korean Zombie. If Ariel Helwani had some legitimate inside source, if he's heard from Volkanovski, if he heard from the Korean Zombie's managers, and he knows that that's what's going to happen, if he knows that that's what they're both trying to get the UFC to put together, and they both said yes, then maybe that's what we have. I don't like it for the Korean Zombie. It's a much easier fight, in my opinion, for Volkanovski. But who else is there? Who else is sitting around that division? You know? Giga's fighting anyway. You would say maybe Giga, but he's got a fight booked with Calvin Keator this weekend. I would love it. I would love to say, hey, you know what? Fuck it. Let's try to get something else. It's just too short notice. Wouldn't it have been great though if they were like, let's just get something else in the main event. Let's put Giga, Volkanovski for the title. Let's give Calvin Keator somebody else. He could still keep that main event spot in the fight night, but give him somebody different. Somebody not fucking Giga. I would love it for Calvin Keator. But unfortunately, Calvin Keator's going to have to fight Giga. And for all means, I'm not saying that Calvin Keator has no shot in this. I'm just saying you go from Max Holloway to Giga. It's like, fuck, man. Like, God, you got to give him something a little bit easier. He could win. He could. Or he could get the shit kicked out of him again. And yes, he could do it against anybody. There's nothing that says he can't get the shit kicked out of him against a top 15 or a guy ranked 10. Not saying that there's nobody around that area, no new upcomer that's outside of top 15 that can't kick the crap out of him. Yeah, for sure. But at least it doesn't seem like such a setup. At least it doesn't seem that much of a raw deal for somebody. But that's it. That's the fight. That's the card. Calvin Keator, Giga Chikadze. This is going to be a great card. I think it's a little overlooked. Fight nights are always a little overlooked, especially when you have a big time pay-per-view coming up. Obviously, next weekend. Well, yeah, this upcoming weekend, free fight night. The next weekend is obviously the Ngannou and Cyril Gane pay-per-view, which is a freaking banger. Brandon Moreno, Figgy 3 is on that. So yeah, this is getting a little bit overlooked, but trust me, guys, don't overlook this pay-per-view. Do not overlook this pay-per-view. Kelleher, Kakramonov, that's a really good fight. Brandon Royval and Bontarine is a really good fight. Kaylin Chikagian and Jennifer Maia is a very important fight in that division. Michel Pereira, I'm telling you that, dude, you can't find people more entertaining than Michel Pereira. That's a You have to watch him fight. Even if he loses, it's going to be entertaining. You have to watch that. And then Calvin Kattar and Giga is a high level striking bout. I don't like it when they wrestle. I don't like to see guys just on the floor. Cool. Awesome. Watch Giga and Calvin Kattar then. Watch Giga and Calvin Kattar. Watch Muslim against Michel Pereira. Those aren't going to the ground. You don't got to worry about those. Those are bangers. Giga and Calvin Kattar are going to stand up all fight long. So don't miss those fights. I'll be back on Wednesday, getting into some more NBA action. Might talk about a little bit of NCAA basketball, where some of these teams are at. And then obviously Fridays when I'll get heavy into what I think about the season that has happened. Chargers, Colts. Oh, the Colts, what the fuck? And then I'll get into the playoff matchups. The playoffs are set. We know who's playing who and what time. I'll recap the college football national championship that happens tonight. Don't miss the college football national championship, Georgia, Alabama, tonight. Do not miss it. By the time this comes out, it should be starting in about an hour. So if you're watching this on the time that it gets dropped, fucking put on ESPN or ABC. I forgot what channel it's on. But put it on and watch the fucking national championship. That's it for me. You guys have a happy Monday. I'll see you on Wednesday. Peace.